Hey guys, Steve, Scott,
Well,
thanks for the intro. Steve,
okay.
happy Monday, and what a, I guess, interesting Monday. We could
Yep.
say an interesting Monday. Certainly a lot of crazy,
Yeah.
weird, wacky stuff going on out there today.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure. Yeah, we'll show that visually here in a second.
Absolutely. So, welcome everyone. Today is October 30th. Tomorrow's Halloween. And then, as weird as it seems, October's done, and we're moving on into November, and the holidays will be upon us soon. Seems like time is just simply compressing, and I guess that's just a sign of my age. In any case, I've got Steve riding shotgun with me today, and welcome everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to come hear what we have to say. Before we get into the fun stuff, though, just a moment to make the lawyers happy, and just want to make sure that everybody in attendance is aware of the fact that everything we share with you here today and in every webinar is strictly for educational purposes. Please don't misconstrue this as a solicitation to buy or sell anything. If you do need investment advice, please seek out a registered investment advisor or some other licensed individual who's qualified to do that for you. Before we get on with the itinerary, just want to make sure that the new people in here know what's going on around the trade ideas world. And not only do we have the great software that we are constantly updating and improving, but we've got a nice little community that we've built around it as well. Pretty important when getting used to the software. So first and foremost, it all starts off with the live trading room hosted by Barry Anderson. Every day he opens the room well before the market opens. And the nice thing about the trading room is there is no cost. You don't even have to be a TI subscriber to get in there and see what's going on and participate. So if you haven't been taking advantage of that and you're still kicking the tires, a great place to get a taste of all the different ways that trade ideas can be used. And Barry is using the technology himself, calling out his trades along with a couple of other, traders in there that have gained quite the notoriety. So it's a good group of people to be a part of. Of course, we have the hourly webinars Monday through Thursday. Myself and Steve on Mondays. Trade of the week tomorrow. Steve takes the helm. Andy rides shotgun. On Wednesday, we change it up a little bit, bring Dan, the CEO, and Brad, the Chief Technical Officer, in. Always interesting to hear what those two have to say. Then Andy rounds out the 1 hour webinars on Thursdays. I ride shotgun with him, and he's got the trading studio. Then we change it up just a bit on Friday. No hourly guy. We just do a 3 hour support webinar with Andy, myself, Steve, and one of the newer additions to the team, Sean, who's not in here right now, but he's in there as well. So you get 4 people all applying their skill set to the questions that you have. So if you haven't been participating in the Friday support webinar, come give it a try. It's 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, last week, every day was Friday support webinar with our open house, or our test drive, so to speak, that we just completed. So hopefully some of you came to us through that test drive and are maybe attending your first webinar. If so, congratulations. All right, so just wanted to take a brief moment here to show how our AI has affected our subscriber growth. This is when we first launched Holly the AI back around the very first of 2016. And as you can see, our users are responding, and we'll talk about Holly and her performance today as well. So on to the itinerary here. We've got, of course, in keeping with tradition, I'm going to let Steve take the reins here in just a second and go over the market cap, because we've got some weird stuff going on with the indexes and the major indices. Some things are doing one thing, other things are doing the other. When we get into the Holly recap, there are a lot of different ways to view what's happening with Holly. So we're going to get into that today, because here lately, especially today, she's functioning more in the more as the canary in the coal mine and telling us to be nimble. So Steve, if you're ready, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Sure.
That knocked out.
Sure.
There, you should have it.
All right, let me accept screen 1. All right, hello everybody. Welcome to my desktop. We'll go over some of the ETFs indexes as we normally have. Well, here's the long version of the of the spiders that have just been really staying true for the most part, except for a little hiccup back here where I momentarily got bearish and quickly flipped my hat and got back bullish, thankfully. But the trend line way above it still. Let's zoom in here and notice that we have what's called an inside day. Friday's big green candle is smothering the candle from today. A little smaller spinning top here. The low and the high is within the body of and the range for that part of the Friday candle. We call that an inside day. So it could be interesting to see what direction we pop out of on the spiders on the inside day. But for the others, not quite so much. The Qs coming off the heels of the Amazon and Google earnings and Microsoft earnings. And keep in mind, guys, we've got Apple still out of the way, not out of the way. We've got Apple coming up on Thursday. So the Qs are pretty much kind of doing their own thing here with the FANG stocks that were falling out of favor going into earnings, but they all blew the earnings absolutely away last week. So Qs are very strong, trying to work off a little bit of that follow through that they had on Friday. Diamonds gave a lot back today, I guess, for lack of a better word, and actually took out yesterday's lows on Friday. So not much going on there. And then the Russell 2000 just continues to play games with this trading range. I mean, last week we had a big breakdown, and then the buyers stepped in and popped it right back into play. Well, similar thing kind of happened again today. We were looking at a big red candle today. IWM was looking really bad, and then buyers stepped into the general market, which we'll look at in a minute here, and kind of propped that one up as well. Again, the IWM is measuring the Russell 2000 small cap stocks. So, you know, that's the heartbeat and the pulse of what's going on in the IWM. A lot of people argue, you know, this crazy sideways action we've had for a month is really just working off the giant move that we had going back to early August all the way up to early October. So the entire month of October has been nothing but just working off a lot of the IWM's movement. And we'll keep an eye on it, but boy, 2 times in a row now, I'm calling it a stick save, you know, where the red candle was breaking down imminently and the buyers stepped in and propped it up. You know, another note on this market is the seasonality. You know, if you get caught up in seasonalities like, oh boy, I'm getting ready to short this market in October. Why are you doing that? Well, because the Trader's Almanac says that October and September are usually the weakest, most volatile months of the year. Well, not this year. The October has got one more day in the month on the calendar tomorrow, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It looks like we survived an October crash, which a lot of people were trying to put on the table, trying to draw parallels to 87 October crash of a market that just got way too far ahead of it, too far, too fast. Well, I guess that's not the case because we are not pulling back. And when we even attempt to pull back, if I go into the intraday here, here's our gap down. Friday, big move on Friday. We came into the day gap down, filled the gap, went positive for about 5 minutes, and then went negative for the rest of the day. Just kind of fell back in the lunchtime hour and just kind of held our own there towards the end of the day. The Qs actually had a little bit of buying coming in towards the end of the day, as well as the IWM, a little bit of buying coming in towards the end of the day. Diamonds are starting to look a little bit weak as well. So, I mean, I don't really have any tells to say that I'm seeing in the fingerprints or the footprints in the sand here or the tea leaves. A lot of the volume today was done on good volume. The diamonds there did 1.43 relative volume. That's good. Above relative volume normalcy for the spiders. That's good. Qs were above normal volume, and IWM was also above normal volume, albeit a little bit of a pullback and a little bit of sideways action. I think the big takeaway here is, once again, there's no follow through in the market. When we get a attempt to sell off, we have afternoon buyers that just come in and prop us up and keep things in order. So until that stops happening, that's the order of the day. But this was a tricky day, and I mean, I'm sure Jamie will touch on it too, but watching Holly for the last 2 weeks, the trade count, I think every day has been under 10 trades. That in itself is an interesting indicator, a low frequency of trade counts. The AI is not seeing a lot of opportunity day day after day, even though the diamonds and the Dow and the spiders continue to make new highs. Doesn't necessarily mean that the odds are in favor of trading and setups, and that's kind of the way it's been for the last week and a half. The AI has been pretty soft, and so we're kind of in canary in the coal mine mode in terms of what the AI is telling us. But you get a day like today, gap down, go positive, go negative, the buyers step back in. Just a really wishy-washy type of day. Not much that we could really glean from it, in my opinion. I think if you did well today, you should pat yourself on the back because you probably did better than the majority of traders out there. Okay, I'd love to answer that question, Jeff. So that's energy building up. Jeff, were you referring to me when I was talking about the IWM? I can only assume.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
In the Qs, okay. IWM is just sideways until further notice. I mean, again, like I said, it's working off a huge 2-month run. So the thing of note is 2 attempts to sell off have been bought back. The Qs, on the other hand, back to your question, yeah, we had a lot of earnings end of month, and they were great earnings, just blowing out of the water. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and of course, people probably rubbing their hands together waiting for the Apple earnings, the other big one that's going to be coming out this week on Thursday post-market. So the Qs definitely have the edge based on the momentum that came through from the earnings last week. But you can see, again, kind of a TP action in the Qs. They actually were positive for most of the day, following through the strength on Friday, and then gave it all back, pretty much for the most part, down to about here, and then kind of just petered out into the middle of the range for the day. So so that's energy building up. I don't know if that's energy building up, Jeff. It's the energy is showing itself. The momentum the momentum has been building. Let's put it that way. Going forward, I don't know. I mean, the other 3 indices are taking a day off and taking a break. So, it could be that maybe the third day is the charm in the Qs, where we start to get some short-term profit taking in technology land as they spin the plates, as I call it, or pass the baton. It was interesting how much today changed. This morning, KWeb, great looking chart over the weekend, which was the trade of the week, coming off of this big sell-off and then a running of the stops and a long tail here. And then the market opened up and KWeb took off. Very pleasant, happily to see that. And then the market just kind of changed and everything just kind of got sloppy. So KWeb there again, the trade of the week, is kind of a microcosm of the action that we did have today. But we'll talk more about this tomorrow as we get another data point, and I take the helm tomorrow and focus more on the trade of the week type stuff. But for now, that's all I'm seeing in the general market. Pullbacks are hard to come by. It's going to take a lot to get this market to pull back, it would seem. And red candles that show up, 1 o'clock East Coast time, seem to turn into big long wicks, bottoming tail wicks by the time 4 o'clock turns around. And that's just the way this market has been. So those are my observations. I'll kick it back to you there, Jamie.
Good stuff, Steve. Good stuff. And that KWeb chart that you just showed, I mean, that's the intraday pattern of the day right now, and I'll show a couple more examples.
You might want to read Omar's comment. That's a great comment for a segue for what we're going to talk about. Good comment, Omar.
Let me read this real quick. I barely found a play today. Yeah, so I thought it was me and the software parameters. It's nice to hear that it was the market. Right, BAK did pop. Right, so nice comment, Omar. I mean, what you're saying is exactly what I'm about to say and what I've been saying all day, and just, like I say right here, no matter how you sliced it or diced it, it was a tricky day. So if you were up a little bit or even flat on the day, pat yourself on the back, because it was not easy to get any traction. As Steve has already pointed out, the major indices, what they're doing, a little decoupling there on a couple of them. But a tough day no matter what. So sometimes when these days come, it is what it is. We have our things that we know we're supposed to look for. We've got our compulsory routine. What are these things doing? What are those things saying? And today there was a lot of canceling signals. All right. So when we get in here and talk about Holly, obviously she is struggling a little bit with the trade count and just trying to make sense of things from a statistical nature here. I want to flip over to this chart real quick here, just to give everybody, once again, refresh your memory on how Holly's been doing. Now this chart here is only looking at 2017, so all the way back to the 1st of 2017 up to the current day. This is showing Friday's performance, have yet to fold in today's, but no big surprise as to what's going to happen. We're going to have a little bit more of a downturn here. So this is risk off, right? This is the most conservative mode, and Holly is still crushing the SPY, so to speak. It's just that we're going through this little phase where the statistical probability is few and far between, and you know it's a good sign when we're seeing Holly mimic what our observations are. Now that is a good thing in and of itself because it tells us, well, it wasn't a great day today, but at least I was in tune with what was going on, and I didn't push things, and I didn't take unnecessary risks, and I may have just waited and waited and waited, tried a couple of perfect patterns. Guess what? They didn't work today, and that's okay. Happens from time to time.
Yeah, this chart, when I see it in this capacity going back to January, it always reminds me the word casino odds just come back into play. There's Holly showing the aggregate casino odds. The casino is going to win at the end of the year. Maybe every now and then a big whale is going to fly in on their private jet and stay in one of their suites and hit the casino for $1 million at the baccarat table. But you know what? That guy's probably going to come back and give it back, you know, 3-6 months later. So this chart is showing in the aggregate, in the whole casino odds. But if we focus just on the tail end, yeah, we've got a market that's making all-time highs in the indices, but the stuff that's bubbling underneath the scenes, the AI is not getting a good grip on it. And so it's not just today, it's been really for a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, that the AI has been a slow trade count and kind of a canary in the coal mine, showing the difficulty.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the, you know, tried and true metrics that are usually pretty good indicators, giving us, you know, helping us temper our expectations on the trading day. For example, let me just bring my good friends over here, my compare counts, which I like to take a peek at in the first 15 minutes of the market to try to give me an idea of what the institutions are doing. You know, where's the high volume coming in? Is it on the sell side or the buy side? On the big cap stocks of 4 billion, 5 billion plus. And we can see, well, today, after that first 15 minutes, everything looked all rosy. We had 63, 61, so pretty much on the big caps. Well, no, that's both 61. That's a pretty good. Ratio there on heavy buying on the open. Of course, it could have been a lot of the Qs, right? A lot of the Q-based stocks. So let me just get this chart, get a chart back up here for us. So we can see here, I've kind of marked this up a little bit. You know, we had the prior close here. I believe we came within 9 cents of closing that gap, but didn't quite get it. So, you know, hey, Jamie and a lot of other people are looking at these metrics on the open. We're seeing a big bias to the upside. And of course, looking at those metrics 15 minutes in, we're taking those readings about right here. Right? So we're thinking, okay, a little sideways movement, and then boom, look what the SPY does. It does crack out of that little range, and lo and behold, it's off to the races. Everybody's ecstatic. Woohoo, party time. And then whoosh. 1 minute it's party time. Next thing, everybody's running for the doors, and not only do we swoon down, but you know, take a little bounce up and then even set these lower lows. Of course, never really got anywhere close to the bottom of the prior day candle. So as Steve was pointing out, an inside day, which those are infamous as well for not being the most conducive of trading days. So we're seeing a lot of things, you know, that are telling me, well, you know, don't just go, it's not Katie bar the door time yet. We did see some good opening, you know, bias to the upside on the big caps, but man, that party got squashed pretty quick. I guess the cops showed up, everybody had to run, and we had the little swing down here, okay? Now, keeping that in mind, you know, as we were saying earlier, tough day no matter how you slice it or dice it. I mean, this does not make for easy trading, you know, by any means. It's never easy. But if we look at some of the other stocks, and the K-Web, classic example, boom, 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 whoosh, okay? Well, what if you were looking at some of these other stocks? AVGO, it's the one that went straight up and this flatlined, but most of them, we're getting these inverted V patterns, you know, up and then all the way down like the behemoth Amazon, right? So, you know, think about it from this perspective. Unless you came in long already and got this, you know, it was 50-50 chance the rest of the day, all right? So this is the pattern of the day. Of course, when things do this and never set up again, it makes it hard for us to spot any good trades, you know? For myself, I like to see them when they run up. And if we go back to the AVGO, you know, you want them to run up and then settle in and then make another run, but that wasn't, those animals were not in the forest today. No matter how hard I looked, I just couldn't find, you know, the things that I'm used to finding, all right? So what was that last one too? Yep. That's a let me see. Where'd my plotter go there? Yeah, that is a Holly trade, and we'll talk about this one in just a second. So on to Holly. Let us talk about our girl, Holly here. So today, pretty much canary in the coal mine mode. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, just like in the olden days, they used to take the little canary in the cage down there to mine the coal. If they see the canary keel over, they boogie out of that coal mine because there's gas leaking in, and the canary, well, since it's so small, it gets affected a lot quicker, and that way the miners know to leave, and so they don't get suffocated down there. Now, Holly can act in the same capacity. So we see the market peeling off the top, and you know, it didn't do it really in a, it didn't peel off in a slow and orderly fashion. Once it broke this plane here, it was just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Deer in headlights can happen very easily in that environment. So, of course, Holly, because of the general overall great bull market that we've been in and technically still are in, is always going to come to the party pretty much stacked to the long side, right? Because that's just where most of the alpha is showing up in the scans. And we did have a nice variety of strategies today. Out of this little bevy here, we did have 3 shorts. Of course, just because the strategy makes the cut does not necessarily guarantee that those setups will be met. And we really had a pretty low trade count today. Early bird spit out 3 and severely underperformed today. You know, came into the session at 58.1% odds. Went 0 for 3. That's why we're seeing 0% in the win percentage today. This guy, Tailwind, did a little bit better. Went 1 for 1, 50%. And then, of course, Mighty Mouse spit one out, and it was a winner. And that's all. That's all for that one, 100%. Now, obviously, 100% looks a lot better when we have multiple trades in there, but it is what it is today. So, focusing on these charts over here, whether we're looking at Holly's risk on or risk off graph today, I mean, yeah, there was a little tiny bit of green there, but you really need a magnifying glass to even see it. And so, those of you who are used to watching Holly and engaging with her know that it's quite common in the opening 15, 20 minutes or just shortly after she starts adding positions that we're going to see a little ebb and flow around the 0 line, hopefully catch some green and continue to the upside. Well, not today. The exact opposite. Maybe caught a little green here for a very small amount of time, and then it was just nothing but red the rest of the day. Risk off. Same thing. Even if you were buying, even if you were in all these things and holding them, which for months has worked out pretty well, right? But today, nope, no bailout today. You know, if you're holding everything, you still lost. If you're taking everything, if you're obeying Holly's rules, not really that big of a spread, you know, only a nickel difference between risk off and risk on. And on the brighter side of things, for a losing day, very small losing day, is about as close to flat as you can get on only 6 trades. Now, I'll go ahead and sort my all trades blotter by time, just so we can go about looking at these things as they were triggered. Now, ZIOP, once again, flavor of the day as far as the pattern goes. What do we have? Rip, 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 and then back off. Now, Holly did get into this one 15 minutes into the open. So we got 5, 10, 15. Nice clean blue line right here indicates our entry price. And this one, just right off to the races. Now, Holly, I believe she did stay in it the entire duration. Left a little bit on the table. And what I mean by that is I'm looking at the max profit column. which shows me the most that the trade was up while Holly was in it in risk off mode. And we can see, why did Holly get out of this one? Time to exit. And as we can see from the Mighty Mouse, it's designed around a 60-minute hold time. So Holly gets in it here, an hour later, she gets out right about here, slightly under the high of the day. The shaded area corresponds with risk off. So just keep that in mind if you're seeing Holly for the first time. Whenever we double click here, not only does it populate the chart with our stop loss, profit target, or excuse me, entry price, stop loss, and on this one, there wasn't a profit target. Profit target of $2, would have been way up here at 7. That's why we're not seeing it. But a nice little run up nonetheless, and then fold back over. So really couldn't have played that one Harley any better than Holly. 5 cents from the top. And on a smaller stock, not a big, huge winner, but that's 0.73%. Now, we do have an example of a trade around today. Even though this one took most of the day to get back up there, it is still technically considered a trade around. What do I mean by a trade around? Well, a trade around is something that you need to get in the habit of marking up when you see Holly in a losing position. All right, so we can see here, Holly gets long right here at the blue line. 5, 10, 15 minutes later, we're heading towards that stop loss. We're down, 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 down. So whether you see it here or whether you see it after it's already been stopped out, it doesn't really matter. All you'll want to do is once we're down here below the signal line, all you want to do is set a price alert. Since you already have access to price alerts, you already have access to Holly, well, that means you're a premium subscriber. You also have access to price alerts. So when we see Holly down or stopped out, just get in the habit, come back up here and set a price alert for the same price. So we say $16.95. We say it's a Holly trade around. If the price rises, we want to go long. So all during this time, there's no trigger, and it will only trigger if it makes it back up to that line. So later in the day, right about 50 minutes before the market, you would have gotten that price alert triggered. Hey, it's back up to the price. Well, you can see what happened on the second time where it passed through. It caught a little traction and went, right? And based on what we're seeing here, we could have used our original stop loss, or this little area right here kind of jumps out at me because we had a nice little 15-minute consolidation before she went up there and punched through that line again. So we could have, if we're trying to be ultra conservative, which today was not a bad day to be like that, then you could have even used lower risk than what Holly was recommending and got that second little punch there. All right, because the nice thing about a trade around is if it never gets back up there, you're never going to get the alert, right? So we can see here on CARA, Holly did get stopped out, as it came back through here and stopped her out. If we would have set our price alert, it got close again, but you never would have seen this stock again because indeed it did not punch through there. So that's the cool thing about the trade arounds. If they come back up to the line, great, because I'll say this, the statistical probability here is not just good at the exact time that Holly spits it out, but the statistical probability is good for the entire day. And a lot of the times a stock will just hover right around the entry line and pass back and forth through it many times before it picks a direction and goes. So we did have one example of a trade around. That's about it for today. There's really not any risk on meat left on the bone today. We got the trade around here, and then late in the day, lo and behold. And what I really liked about this trade from Holly, as it was produced in real time, is we were already pretty well off the bottom of the SPYs here. All right, of course, SPYs wanted to give up a little bit more in the last 5 minutes. Oh well, but we were already off the bottoms here. So nice little trade in this INST. Hey Tim, I see your question. If you're wondering why my times are all wacky, I'm on Pacific time, so just add 3 hours for Eastern. So we have a market open at 6:30 here. So the INST was a nice little trade for the end of the day, based on the prior activity of Holly. We get a nice clean entry signal right here at 33.15. Kind of hovers, pegs the line once more. We get the little sideways action here, and then whoosh, just straight up. Holly stayed in the trade for the entire time on tailwind. That strategy is designed around a 2-hour hold time. So she got in here in this nice little consolidation area, and then boom, it was just off to the races. Now what I really like about this one also is that once Holly calls it and we're in it, then we have a little bit of pattern development coming to the front here. This was the previous high. So if we went ahead and drew a line there, this is where my eyes always go. Okay, Holly's saying this has statistical probability, the market's off the bottom, I'll take a stab at it. We get the sideways motion. Once we do peck at that high and bust above that line, that's a range break. So you did have the opportunity in INST today to actually add to the position based on a secondary signal, which was the range break today. And of course, this is all stuff that is not reported in any of these columns down here. This is from getting used to the system and used to the statistical probability, and then having some things in reserve too, like a simple pattern recognition. It will allow you to really leverage some of these trades. And you know, if you were in 100 here and you ponied up and said, okay, I'll go ahead and add another 100 here, well then, you know, instead of 85 cents, we could add more like $1.50 on the table, you know, with a double lot or whatever you're comfortable with. So all in all, a losing performance, but the more time you spend with Holly, sometimes when she's red, it is possible to come out a little bit of green based on cherry picking some of the trades that she pulls out, or recognizing when you can make a second entry on an already statistically viable trade. All right, so before we move on, any comments from you, Steve, about Holly, or any questions from the crowd?
Again, it's the canary in the coal mine. It's been kind of spotty the last few days, and that in itself is a tell.
Yeah.
You know, keep your eye out at any point in time in the future. You may see Holly quiet and all of a sudden throw out 3 or 4 short trades, entries in a period of 5 minutes. If you guys see that, that's like sailors at morning, red sky at morning, sailors take warning. Take warning. If you see a bunch of short trades come out all at once, you may see the market begin to roll over and follow suit. A lot of times the directional bias that the AI gives us is usually the right direction for the day. And you know, other than that, it's up to, you know, the action of the day. Is it a nice broad-based rally, or is it red to green, green to red, red to green again? Those are difficult. But just be aware, we talk about trade count. You know, the amount of trades under 10 for the last 2 weeks is a very, very light trade selection count. And then trade direction, they've pretty much been all longs. But if any point in time you see a bunch of shorts come in, really want you to pay attention to what the market may start to do. And you know, that could help give you guys, you know, some ideas. Maybe take profits on longs that are open, or if there's some shorts you were thinking about, maybe give them a second look. But I really like to focus on trade selection, market direction, trade frequency, directional bias, things like that.
Cool. So next on the list, as I'm saying right here, there's more stocks showing up on pack losers. And before we can talk about pack losers, first we have to kind of mention the other side of the coin, which is pack leaders, which is a top list that I've been actively monitoring for quite some time now. And before we move on to these two guys, I just kind of wanted to check the questions panel, because I did see Marguerite.
There's a good question on DO, that trade around.
Okay, did Holly make the second turnaround trade on DO? All right, no, that is something that we humans observe and choose to participate in. Holly is always only going to make the first entry, okay? Now, when is it a trade around? Well, anytime it's red, I'm going to go ahead and set a price alert up there, all right? Now, of course, this one went ahead and went red and stopped out. So you see, it's me setting the price alert at Holly's original entry here. So when it comes back up here and I get my price alert, that's for a manual basis. So Holly only makes one entry, just to clarify. But this is what we call, interacting with Holly, and for lack of a better description, trading around with Holly. Because, okay, she spit one out in the morning, it turned into a loser, but because we're used to this methodology and we know that the statistical probability is good for the day, well then there's no harm in going up here and setting that price alert, because if it doesn't get back up there, you're never going to get alerted, and you really wouldn't want to be alerted. But if it does, just like this one did, and this is very uncharacteristic, you don't see these very often where they stay down here for the majority of the day, and then right here in the last 50 minutes go, hey, remember me? I'm back. And then this time, a nice northern draft. It's kind of like, Steve and Andy and I always like to kid around and use the analogy about, there was always a guy in our trading office back in the 90s. Steve was here in California, I was in Texas, we were spread all over the place. But there was always one guy in every office, sometimes two. And, in retrospect, I can laugh and have a chuckle about it, but they were just bad traders, right? So a lot of the times they'd be in these bad positions, and they'd just be, the stock was going to turn on them at any moment. So what would us, scheming traders on the other side of the wall do? We'd be like, okay, well, let's go ahead and take the opposite position, because I know this thing is just going to rip the opposite direction. And quite frequently, we would make money off of someone else's pain. Well, the theory is the same here. Okay, we saw Holly get chewed up in it earlier, but hey, since we know statistical probability is good for the day, set the price alert, see if we get the second attempt. If it doesn't get back up there, we never know about it. So it's just a technique that we've developed to use in conjunction with Holly. I hope that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get on to the pack leaders and the pack losers, okay? So, of course, these guys are top lists, right? And I often like to refer to, say, an alert window, which is this guy down here, where we've got live streaming coming through as our filter set is met, and then our catalyst triggers, right? And of course, there's always motion in the ocean here. And a lot of the times, just pulling these symbols up, and probably 80% of the time, I'm folding, fold, just like the poker player, fold. But then I'll see one, and be like, yeah, that one's good, volume's good, risk is in place, yes. But 85% of the time, I'm folding. I'm acting on this window. You can act on a top list too, but a lot of the times I like to think of these more as predictive, right? Okay, well, this guy right here is showing me stocks hitting highs. This guy's showing me stocks hitting lows. But here, I'm using position and range, right? So I know these stocks aren't hitting highs because I can see a little gap here, which is telling me, well, they're real close to their high. So let's just pull up an example here. Let's see how OC closed. All right, so we can see OC closed very close to its high, but not quite at its high. This last, second to the last 5-minute candle here was its high, then it pulled back. But earlier in the day, before this had happened, what if, I saw the same reading on that little cylinder as OC was here? I could see, well, it's not at its high, but it's close, so I'm going to pull it up, and then maybe I would have been brought to the attention of OC as it was right here, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go ahead and set a price alert up here so that when it does pop through there, I can size it up and see maybe I want to get a little piece of that long. Of course, had we done that, it would have been a nice little upside move. But, I'm scoping them out. I'm sizing them up based on how close they are to their high, and are they consolidating nicely, or has maybe the moves already occurred, in which case I would just be like, okay, on to the next. Now, of course, when I'm doing that, I'm trying to focus on the ones that are pumping a little bit more extra volume. Extreme high volume, mine are called turbo breaks, but in any case, yeah, our window's got this. Now, by the time you pulled it up, Did you have time to act on it? Or, you know, I mean, when you see this, you're like, I'd hate to chase it up here and have it retrace back here. So depending on how quick you were, how handy with the steel you are, so to speak, maybe you got a little piece of this. Maybe you got it up here, or, you know, I mean, hey, the choices are limitless. But I'm sure somebody capitalized on that today. So the bottom line is this: what's the name of the list? Pack leaders. Why do I call it pack leaders? Well, let's take a peek. If we look at the filter set, which is incredibly simple, you see I'm foregoing all the traditional metrics like average daily volume. I'm just putting market cap has to be 4 billion with a B or higher. I'm weeding out ETFs and iShares with these two guys just because I don't want to see those guys. I only want to see stocks. ETFs and iShares don't report earnings, so this is a de facto way to weed them out without having to maintain a custom list. And then this little guy, thus the name pack leaders, position in lifetime range, ladies and gentlemen, not 52-week high, but ever since the stock has been alive. It has to be at the top. So every day this little guy's pretty packed. As of right before the big earnings of Thursday, this list was packed. I mean, it was full all the way down to here, and then you could still scroll more, right?
I remember.
Now, what I've been doing, and of course my window magically disappeared here. There we go. All right. This guy, I've been watching him for a long time just because I'm like, well, might as well go ahead and create the inverse. And guess what? As you may have guessed, for months, this thing was blank. Maybe one stock would pop up every once in a while, maybe TCS. I think that's it. Let me see. No, not TCS. I think it's TCO. Yeah, that guy. And I'd look at this guy and I'd be like, well, of course it doesn't really count. But even if you look at this guy, right, huge gap down, looks like a flat line, but when you expand it out a little bit, what's he doing? He's breaking down. He's breaking down, and there's no support. There's no evident, you know, obvious support because there's nothing there, right? So a lot of the times we're very used to seeing this pattern inverted, but guess what? More and more stocks are showing up at all-time lows, right? Here we have wide open West. Wow. All right. Now, of course, that nasty little wick there. We can see what's happening to this guy. He dropped out of his range, tried to establish a little base camp here, but nope. You know, with nothing over here to act as support, well, it's just the opposite of a stock at all-time highs. Now it's into the abyss. Now, what does it mean that more and more stocks are showing up here? Well, I try not to read too much into it other than the fact that, well, if the market is a forest and these animals haven't been showing up and all of a sudden they're starting to show up, well, use a lot of analogies here. Maybe it's a season change, right? Maybe all the birds are flying south for the winter and birds that usually aren't there are showing up. I don't know. But it's almost like we're seeing an equation start to balance out here. Just because stocks are showing up here, does that mean the market's about to tank? Probably not. But over time, if more and more and more do, then eventually at some point, you're going to be more in tune with the market and when it may turn than people not keeping track of things like this.
You know, it's kind of a trickle of information underneath the surface. Two questions. The pack losers, is that just your pack leaders flipped? As simple as that?
I had to change it up just a little bit, but the main ingredient is the same. In other words, position in lifetime range, 0 in the max, meaning it has to be at all-time lows. They're saying, okay, it's at least had to have pumped out 100,000 in volume today, just so we, you know, hopefully avoid super illiquid stuff. And price of 3, and we're weeding out the ETFs and iShares.
All right, well, before you forget, if you could drop both of those in the chat window, you've got some people's interest peaked, of course, on those configurations, and I promised them that you would, so it looks like you are. Just pay attention, guys, to your chat window on the GoToWebinar floating toolbar. Hit the triangle to expand the window, and then you'll see a couple of cloud codes in there. One will be for the down, and the second one will be for the up.
All right, there's the losers, and then we got the pack leaders. All right, both of those guys are now in the chat area. The cloud links are there for everyone to grab hold of.
Yeah, and just to make sure, it's not in the questions box, you guys. It's in the chat window. The chat window is separate from the questions box. So if you go back to the GoToWebinar panel, you can expand that chat window and you can see. There you go. For a second, you can see what Jamie has dropped in. For any reason, guys, if you don't get a copy of what we're giving out here for the webinar, no sweat. Just email info@trade-ideas. We'll show you that again at the ending of the webinar, and you can just say, hey, I never got a copy of what was being discussed in Jamie's webinar, the pack leaders. Could somebody please give me a copy? So don't sweat. If you don't get it here, we can get it to you by those means.
Let's see, I was just looking at
David's
comment. I'm like, well, let me look at those cloud links, make sure I didn't just dump the same one in there, and they are unique. Now, David, does that mean you already had a copy and now you're just getting a duplicate copy? Because, yeah, they would be the same if that's what you mean.
Let me take a look. I will take a gander. Let me do one here.
Sure. Confirm for me. I mean, I don't
Okay,
think
I'm doing pack leaders first. Copy, file load from cloud. Nice green window. Okay, let's go back to the GoToWebinar and scroll up just a skosh. And the second one says pack losers on the page, copying the code, copy, load from cloud, red. Looks good on my end. Must be user error over there, but I just loaded both of those.
And just keep in mind, you might want to sort by, everybody's a little bit different, but this little volume today is always going to tell you, hey, how's the volume? If it's at 100, it's already done its normal volume. Also, very important, the more you use our little single stock windows, the more you'll get addicted to them and not ever want to go without them again, because once again, maybe we don't have a bunch of volume metrics up here, but when we pull something up, we can see immediately, assuming you've added these metrics, just like you would any other filter set from a top list window or an alert window. We just pick all the metrics that we want to see, what our favorite metrics are, and we add those as columns, right? And so all your metrics will show up here, so there's no flipping around. You can immediately see relative volume. Hey, how's the 1 minute? How's the 5 minute? It really will simplify the whole process of, because ultimately, as soon as we pull the symbol up, we want as little time as possible to pass before we go yes or no. And having your data quickly accessible in a single stock window with all your favorite metrics sure does make that a lot easier.
All right. Good to know.
Oh yes, and I guess I sprung an extra 0 into pack losers.
Losers.
So, forgive my typo. Feel free to go in there and change it.
Why don't you show them how to fix it, since we're asking?
Sure. Hey,
config.
Right click.
Summary.
And all we do is we
pack losers.
Remove the unneeded 0 or the unneeded letter O, and voila.
Now we're compliant.
Mm-hmm. Of course, hey, if it's a big loser, it could be a loser, right? We can throw extra vowels in there. In any case, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Sure.
All right, and I have noticed we're just about out of time here, Steve. So any other sage wisdom nuggets to drop on the good folks before we turn it back over to Scott, or do we want to go? Maybe we'll take a couple of chart requests.
I'm going to save anything else sage-wise that I have for my webinar tomorrow, so it's your call.
You know what? What are we rocking, about 6 minutes till? All right, Scott, if you're there, we're ready for you, buddy.
All right, yeah, thank you. Sounds good. So the couple items before we turn you loose for the day. If you're a interactive brokerage user, make sure that you ask about Brokerage Plus. You can manage your trades directly from that, and it's actually in the newest version that's available as a download, not just in the beta, although access to it is basically in the beta. If you have an interactive brokerage account and are using Trade Ideas Premium, you can use Brokerage Plus for free right now. It's not going to have any additional charge. So any questions about that, just email info@trade-ideas.com for some help. Trade Ideas podcast every Friday. There was a new one this last Friday. Make sure that you download it. Just go to whatever app you use to listen to podcasts and search for Trade Ideas podcast. It's right there. Subscribe, get the newest ones, and stay informed. We have a sale code that expires tomorrow night at midnight on Halloween. Take advantage of that. It is Holly Sale Ween, all caps, just like it is on the handout. You can download the handout by clicking on the handouts panel and you go to webinar interface and clicking the blue link after it's expanded and download that. The sale ends tomorrow night at midnight. Make sure you use that code before then, and you can also use it to upgrade from standard to premium. Just go to the account, change my account page in the account management section of the website, and you can apply the code. There's also another code, and that's good. Actually, it's probably only good until midnight tomorrow night too, because we're gonna get a new code for the following month. But this code will actually work until the next office hours, so it'll work until next Monday, and it's 15% off your first month or year of Trade Ideas. So I'd recommend getting in on that Halloween sale. It saves you a lot more. But if you drag your heels, you'll still be able to use the FinTech code for another week. Same thing about the premium or standard. They both include a full hour of one-on-one training with Jamie or Steve or Andy. So get in there. Email us your questions, info@trade-ideas.com, and we'll help you out. You can reach out to Steve or Jamie directly. Their emails are on the screen or on that handout that you downloaded. And follow Steve @TodayTrader on Twitter. QuantBot is Jamie. Trade Ideas 1's Dan Merkin. Thanks, everyone. We'll get the recording up later tonight or tomorrow. And have a good one. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jamie.